Aileen Carol Wuornos was born on February 29, 1956 in Rochester, Michigan. Her life was destined to be one of tragedy, instability, and violence. She grew up in a troubled household, abandoned by her parents at a young age and raised by her grandparents, who were abusive both physically and emotionally. By the age of 15, Wuornos was homeless, surviving on the streets through petty crime and prostitution. But no one could have predicted the path she would take, a path that would make her one of America's most infamous serial killers. Aileen's childhood was anything but normal. Her mother, Diane Wuornos, married Aileen's father, Leodale Pittman, when she was just 16 years old. The marriage quickly fell apart, and by the time Aileen was 4 years old, her mother had abandoned her and her brother Keith. Their father, a convicted child molester, was never part of their lives. As he was serving time in prison when Aileen was born, he later committed suicide in prison. Aileen and her brother were left in the care of their grandparents, Lori and Britta Wuornos. The household was dysfunctional, and Aileen later claimed that her grandfather sexually abused her throughout her childhood. At the age of 11, she began engaging in sexual activities in exchange for food, cigarettes, and drugs. By the age of 14, Aileen became pregnant after being raped by one of her grandfather's friends. She was sent to a home for unwed mothers, where she gave birth to a son who was immediately put up for adoption. Aileen's teenage years were marked by further chaos. After being expelled from school, she left home and started living in the woods near her family's home, relying on prostitution to survive. This pattern of instability, abuse, and exploitation set the stage for the violent life that would soon unfold. Throughout her late teens and early 20s, Aileen Wuornos was arrested multiple times for charges ranging from disorderly conduct to assault and theft. Her criminal activities escalated as she moved across the country, from Michigan to Colorado to Florida. Wherever she went, trouble seemed to follow. In the mid-1980s, Aileen found herself in Florida, where she began a relationship with Tyria Moore, a hotel maid. Their relationship would become central to Aileen's story, as she later claimed that her love for Tyria drove her to commit the murders that would make her infamous. Aileen Wuornos' killing spree began in 1989. Over the course of the next year, she would murder 7 men, all of whom she had encountered while working as a prostitute. She later claimed that all the killings were in self-defense, alleging that the men had either raped her or attempted to rape her. However, the evidence suggested otherwise. Her first victim was Richard Mallory, a 51-year-old electronics store owner. On November 30, 1989, Aileen picked him up on the side of the road. After driving to a secluded area, she shot him multiple times, then took his money and his car. Mallory's body was found several days later, and the case remained unsolved until Aileen's eventual arrest. Aileen's next 6 victims met a similar fate: David Spears, Charles Carskadden, Peter Seams, Troy Burress, Charles Humphreys, and Walter Antono were all found dead between May and November of 1990. Each of them had been shot, robbed, and left on the side of the road. The bodies of Seams and Burress were never recovered, but their personal belongings were found in Aileen's possession. The murder of Richard Mallory was particularly significant because it revealed Aileen's cold-blooded nature. Mallory was later revealed to have a history of sexual violence, which added some credibility to Aileen's claim that she had acted in self-defense. However, the manner in which she killed him and the subsequent victims suggested that her actions were more premeditated than she let on. By the end of 1990, authorities were beginning to connect the murders through ballistics and witness reports of a woman driving the victims' vehicles. Aileen Wuornos was eventually arrested in January 1991 at a biker bar in Volusia County, Florida. After her arrest, police tracked down Tyria Moore, who was living in Pennsylvania. Under police pressure, Tyria agreed to cooperate with the investigation. She called Aileen from the police station, pleading with her to confess to the murders so she wouldn't be implicated in the crimes. On January 16, 1991, Aileen confessed to the killings. In her confession, she claimed that all of the murders had been committed in self-defense. She described the killings in detail, maintaining that each of the men had either assaulted her or attempted to rape her before she shot them. However, the forensic evidence and the nature of the crimes suggested a pattern of robbery and premeditated murder. Aileen Wuornos was charged with 6 counts of first-degree murder. During her trial for the murder of Richard Mallory, her history of sexual abuse and trauma was brought up as a mitigating factor. However, the jury was unconvinced by her self-defense claims, and on January 27, 1992, Aileen Wuornos was found guilty of Mallory's murder. She was sentenced to death. Over the next few months, Aileen was convicted of 5 more murders and received additional death sentences for each one. The case captivated the nation, with Aileen being labeled America's first female serial killer. Her life and crimes became the subject of intense media scrutiny, and her story was later adapted into the 2003 film Monster, starring Charlize Theron, who won an Academy Award for her portrayal of Aileen. During her time on death row, Eileen's mental state deteriorated rapidly. She displayed signs of paranoia and delusions, claiming that the prison guards were poisoning her food and that the government was plotting to kill her. Despite her erratic behavior, she waived her right to appeal and requested that her execution be carried out as soon as possible. On October 9, 2002, Aileen Wuornos was executed by lethal injection at Florida State Prison. She was 46 years old at the time of her death. In her final moments, she reportedly said, "I'd just like to say I'm sailing with the Rock, and I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus June 6th. Like the movie Big Mothership and all. I'll be back." The story of Aileen Wuornos continues to provoke debate to this day. Some view her as a victim of her circumstances, a woman who had been subjected to a lifetime of abuse and exploitation, lashing out at a world that had been cruel to her. Others see her as a cold-blooded murderer who preyed on innocent men for money and pleasure. Her case has raised important questions about the nature of justice, mental illness, and the treatment of women in the criminal justice system. While Aileen Wuornos may never be fully understood, her story serves as a haunting reminder of how a life of abuse and hardship can lead to unimaginable violence. Aileen Wuornos' life was marked by tragedy and violence from the start. Her story is a complex one, filled with pain, trauma, and ultimately death. Whether viewed as a victim or a villain, Eileen's place in the annals of true crime is undeniable. Her legacy lives on in books, films, and documentaries. As society continues to grapple with the question of what drives someone to commit such heinous acts. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think drove Aileen Wuornos to kill? Was she a victim of her circumstances, or was there something more sinister at play?